I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Friday, May the 29th, brought to you in part by Zactran. Provide your calves with the BRD control they deserve. Treat your cattle with one cost-effective dose of Zactran. Remember to observe the 35-day withdrawal period after treatment. For more information, go to Zactran.com or visit with your BI representative. Voluntary resolutions. That's what our biggest cattlemen's organization says we need to look at to try to fix things. The branded iron's already cooling off, believe it or not. If we don't strike now, we're not going to get anything done. I realize as we're going through this coronavirus, this whole crisis deal, things are all in upheaval here, and nothing's like it is when we get back to normal. We're selling more negotiated cash cattle and more negotiated grid cattle combined than we are formulas. That hasn't happened in years and years and years. Everything's just, the apple cart's been completely tossed over. And that's what they want. Plus the DOJ is breathing down the Packers' necks with his investigations that's been asked for from every cattlemen's organization, most all of your agriculture state major senators, even the President of the United States, the Secretary of Agriculture. They're trying to get the pressure off of them. Everything's messed up right now compared to what it normally is. But we know that whenever this all dies down, things get back to normal, we're going to be right back in the same mess that we've been in before. Your Packers control 85% of the movement of fat steers and heifers, and they have the bulk of their needs, more than the bulk, almost their entire needs filled, so they don't have to get aggressive and go out and bid on cattle, and then all the rest of the cattle are loosely based on what that little minuscule amount were actually sold for. It doesn't work. Cattle feeding in general is a piss poor investment as long as we continue to buy feeder cattle in a competitive market and sell finished cattle in a non-competitive market. So we've got to get something done. You would think with the price gouging that the Packers have done, the loss of beef demand that we're experiencing now and are going to experience going forward here until they get things back in order, that's going to hurt the entire beef and cattle industries because they just gouged so much that people can't afford. They're getting sticker shock as they're going in and looking at their favorite beef cuts here. And they've taken advantage of those consumers, and it's going to fall back on your cattle producers more so than them by losing that beef demand. We've got to fix things. How do we fix them? You know that I've been pushing a mandated minimum negotiated cash trade going forward here for 30% or more of your week's volume per facility being mandated to be negotiated cash, whether it's live or dressed, but negotiated cash sales could be in the auction markets. I think it could help our auction market, especially your fat sales up in the Midwest. I'm all about helping those guys. But NCBA, your major state affiliates, especially in the Southern Plains, your Texas Cattle Feeders, your Kansas Livestock Association, they are all about voluntary resolutions. How have voluntary resolutions worked in the past? Well, we have voluntary country of origin labeling. So if a packing plant or processing facility wanted to put on their products, on the labels there, where those cattle were born, raised, fed, and slaughtered, they could do that, but they don't want to do that. We're seeing now a greater awareness of our local, smaller facilities that are supporting local produced and fed and slaughtered beef, and they're presenting it to people that want to support that. There's a big push for that. We just don't have enough of them. We need more smaller processing facilities, and we're hearing every day that there's talk and there's actually groundbreaking and there's conversion of old packing plants that have been shut down, some of them even for horses that are being converted into cattle. And we feel like that going forward that could be better. It's a shame that some of this bailout money that we're signing up for and about to receive here on the cattle side wasn't used to supplement and support those smaller facilities that are trying to get off the ground, because we are suffering from not enough slaughter capacity. Especially in the southern plains also. About every feedlot you drive by is adding pens. We've got all kinds of pen space. We've got no slaughter capacity. So things are going to continue to get worse. Your board doesn't keep up anymore. It doesn't converge very well. The delivery process is not working because we cannot demand delivery to keep that basis at a minimum. And we don't have access to any kind of an index that we could use for finished cattle, a cash index that we could do a cash settlement with that would invite more outside the industry investors coming in on the long side. So we've got lots of problems here. But like I said, your big cattlemen's associations, the ones that have all the power and all the money, they're all about voluntary resolutions. So we just talked about country of origin labeling. Voluntary is not working there. They will not pass mandatory country of origin labeling. So how are we going to fix this marketing deal that we know is so messed up? Well, their idea is to just simply ask the packers, would you guys please participate in more negotiated cash trade so we have a little bit of price discovery? Could you guys do that for us? They're going to say, no. And how'd that work out? They're looking at maybe doing some variation of negotiated grid and then basing it loosely on the CME specs, which are very loose and not very tight, especially compared to how well cattle are grading these days. But they're calling that bid the grid, but they want that to be voluntary. Well, we were having a conversation. I was having a conversation with my broker, my good friend Candy Sullivan from Brahmagen Commodities, and we were visiting about this, and they're like, well, how do they think this voluntary resolution is going to work? Voluntary resolutions don't work. People would be doing that. Your packers would be doing that. Your cattle people would be participating in animal ID if they wanted to do it. They don't want to do it. And so if it's not mandatory, people are not going to do it. So how do voluntary resolutions work when you're in a free market system here and people are greedy and they're out to make the most money that they can, and everybody against everybody? How is that going to work? And we think, well, it doesn't work. There's no way it's going to work. And then we decided, how about the beef checkoff? There's a lot of people that are bringing that up right now. We don't feel like those dollars are being used best for our industry. The packing industry is getting the best use out of that. They don't have to promote their product because the cattle people are paying to do that for them. You don't see you see packers having to advertise and promote their other protein products. They talk about promoting pork. You see a lot of that, and you see individual packing plants promoting pork, promoting chicken. They're promoting their fake beef products, fake meat products, their alternative proteins. They're doing all that. They don't have to do it with beef because everybody loves beef anyway. Plus, we're doing it for them. So people are upset about the way that their money is being spent with their checkoff dollars, and we're thinking, well, since these major organizations, these cattlemen's associations that are benefiting the most by a lion's share out of your checkoff dollars, let's make that voluntary. I think that should be voluntary too. Why is that mandated? Because they don't want any government intervention in this deal, as they're filling out paperwork and taking credit for the bailout money that people are getting and signing up for right now. They're taking credit for that government intervention and the cheese checks that folks are going to be cashing here within a week. So they're taking advantage of that. That's government intervention. The grading system is government intervention. Inspection is government intervention. There's a lot of government intervention, and when you're dealing with a complete and total monopoly in an industry, you've got to have some government intervention to keep things straight. Well, and you say, well, you know, I think you can get some of those checkoff dollars back. Well, I'm here to tell you guys that my late friend Bob Frame from Vintage, Pennsylvania, many years ago, when I first moved up to Pennsylvania there when I was working with USDA, he had just got done taking the beef checkoff to the Supreme Court. He thought it was unfair that selling 1 to 2 day old baby veal calves and only charging $3 or $4 a head to sell them, he thought the buck a head was ridiculous. And it was absolutely ridiculous. So he did not charge his customers that. And most of them were Amish Mennonite customers. He didn't charge them the buck. Well, they came back on him and tried to get him to pay for all those hundreds of thousands of calves that he had sold without charging that $1 a head checkoff. And he said it was ridiculous for a 1 to 2 day old dairy calf to charge that. And he was right. And they fought him over it. He lost. He took it all the way to the Supreme Court, and he lost again and had to pay that money. And you know, and by that time, you know, his customers weren't going to come back and cough up all the dollars that he didn't charge them because they thought it was ridiculous. And so your checkoff deal is absolutely mandated, and it is government intervention. But since these associations are all about voluntary resolutions, I say we just make the beef checkoff completely voluntary. When you go into the auction market, if you're selling cattle that way, you just fill out a card, kind of like an organ donor card when you get your driver's license. You just check, well, would you like to have $1 of your proceeds per head go to the beef checkoff, or maybe $5 or $25 or $50? Or would you like to keep all that money because you don't really agree with the way that it's being spent? I think that's a fair way to do it. And since we're all about voluntary resolutions, I think, you know, maybe that's something that we should push for. And how do you guys really think that's going to work? Let's talk about the board for Thursday. June live cattle futures up 67 cents at 101.47. August up 45 cents at 101.17. You go on out from there, and they were kind of mixed with your furthest out traded month, October of 2021, being down 67 cents all the way up to up 40 on some of your closer buys. August feeder cattle up $1.47 at 135.50. I tell you what, these feeder cattle are selling excellent for the way things are. For the complexion of the way the market is right now, we've got this artificial fat cattle trade of $1.20. The fundamentals do not back that up at all. How long are they going to hold that $1.20? Probably until box beef cutouts that are continuing to fade every day, until they get more back in line with where they used to be, and the formula cattle are not costing them more than these negotiated cattle. Then they're going to want to wreck your fat cattle market, and then your feeder cattle market's going to go with it. I told you guys on the last visit, I don't think this deal can be propped up much longer. September feeder cattle up $1.17 at 136.25. Going out from there, and they were mixed from down 15 cents to up 85 cents. Talk about your fat cattle trade. And through Wednesday, even though we're still running on a lot less slaughter than what we're used to, but nearly almost 49,000 head of cattle had sold in your 5-area feeding region, negotiated cash. That's more than we would get on a normal week, but already through Wednesday we'd sold that. Then quite a bit more trade on Thursday. Likely we'll see some more on Friday. But confirmed sales on Thursday there in Iowa, 2,600 head from 114 to 115 live, and 174 all the way up to 190 on a dress basis. Nebraska, 8,900 head. Live sales there from 112 to 120, and dress sales from 180 to 190. We continue to see these wide price spreads on your negotiated cash cattle as they're buying more, but we're holding the market up there pretty good. And I realize, and I've told you guys, it's an artificial market. Your packers are doing that to save face, to make it look like they're trying to be fair out there. But the whole reason that they're actually doing it is we're finding out on these formulas that they come back and tie in with some of these dressed beef prices, and likely some of your profit sharing from your packers themselves. And so these formula cattle are coming back costing way too much. I've heard last week some of them as much as $1.50 live basis. Well, they're not going to take them. They've got a little bit of levity in those formula contracts, and they're not picking them up. We've got over 1 million head of cattle backed up that should have already been scheduled and slaughtered. Most of them, the lion's share, are coming out of your corporate feedlots, your formula partners, and those are the ones that are holding the bag. The smaller outfits, and it's great to see that, your negotiated cash guys that sell cattle every week, they're getting along fairly good. They're able to put cattle up for sale. They're getting bids on them. They're selling the cattle, and they're picking them up. But your formula guys aren't quite as in love with their packer relationship as they were a few months ago. But Kansas, Southern Plains finally sold some cattle, and they'll probably sell more here on Friday. But Kansas, 12,200 head there, live sales from 113 to 120, and it's mostly 120, guys. A few dress sales in Kansas, northern part of the state, at 190 dressed. Texas, 4,700 head, 115 to mostly 120. Your packers also like that 4% shrink that they gouge most everybody with, except for the extreme western part of Nebraska there. But that 4% shrink, I heard through the grapevine, those fat cattle that they hauled from the Texas Panhandle all the way to Yankton, South Dakota, only shrink 4%. But your packers have that 4% shrink over the industry, hauling those cattle in less than 100 miles first thing early in the morning, and they're getting that 4% shrink when the cattle are probably shrinking 1.5. But look at your box beef cutout values. Choice cuts down 821. They're just down every day. It's getting more in line. The sticker shock is unbelievable, but they're moving a lot of meat here, and they want to continue to move that beef as they're stepping up slaughter, and we're slowly getting back to normal. But likely when these box beef cutout values, and I would say here probably by the end of the week, for sure the first part of next week, will be under $3.50 a pound on choice cuts. Remember, they gouged all the way up to $4.77 a pound at its worst, but it is falling like a rock. But choice cuts $369.55 down 821. Select $344.09 down 611. Another big day of movement on Thursday of 149 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings. Your slaughter, it's a little bit hard to relate because we had the holiday on Monday. But for the week through Thursday, 330,000. That's down 67,000 from last week because we had a full week with a full Monday on there. But you compare that to the same week a year ago, only down 39,000 this late in the week, and that's not too bad. We're starting to get back. We're likely get close to 500,000 by the time we get done with our Saturday kill here. 500,000 is pretty good, but we need to get up to 600,000 on a normal 5-day week. We need to get up to 630, 640 by the time we start catching or gaining any ground on the deal. But let's look at your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on DB auction late in the day on Thursday at 129.88, up $1.15, and these feeder cattle are selling surprisingly good. It's unbelievable how well they're selling when we're on real shaky ground right here, hoping to hold this 120 market that we've had for 3 weeks now, when there's no fundamentals that are backing that up, only threats from the DOJ and your packers trying to make things look good and continuing to not pick up those formula cattle that they've already agreed that they'd pick up. But, like I said, your box beef cutout values are continuing to fall. By the time they get in the low $3 range there, likely your packers are going to want to back up, and they can very easily. All they have to do is do it, and they will likely start doing that. And then guys, your feeder cattle are going to fall. We may hold this board here for a few more days, maybe another week, but you guys need to be dallying up here with a hedge, because you need to protect yourself. And I'm telling you guys that got cattle turned out on grass, I know that the market's kind of coming to you, but you need to protect yourself. If you can contract those cattle, if you can get those cattle hedged, you need to be kind of taking care of yourself, because we've got a lot more room to fall than we do to gain right now. Because remember, on top of all these cattle that we've got backed up because of the limited slaughter, we still had record numbers of cattle going to be hitting the show list anyway. They're still there, guys, and don't forget that. Well, let's talk about your big sales on Thursday. Winter Livestock, Pratt, Kansas, 2,700 head there. Great sale. This deal's been hinging on a Thursday. Your markets have been higher all week long. They were higher yet on Thursday here. And with a supportive board there, your guys have just been continuing to bid on these feeder cattle, and they're selling really, really well, surprisingly well. But let's look at Pratt there. They're heavy feeder steers, those weighing over 8, over 8.5, selling $6 to $8 higher. That's a ton. Your other weights, lighter weight, were not well tested. Most of those big heavy feeders coming off very, very limited graze out wheat. Feeder heifers $1 to $4 higher. Look at this automated market report off Cattle Market Central with DV Auction there, and look at your best tested weights on those big steers. 497 head of your 8-weight steers averaged 846 at 132.64. That was $5.50 higher on your weighted average. 9-weight steers, 657 head of those, they averaged 932 at 122.98, up $10.50 compared to last week's weighted average on your 9-weight steers. Look at your best tested weight of heifers there, the 7-weights, 331 head of your 7-weight heifers, average $754 at 119.48, up $3.27 compared to your weighted average on 7-weight heifers a week ago. But great sale in Pratt, Kansas there. Farmers and Ranchers Livestock, Salina, Kansas. They are going to be going on break here, but 2,400 head there. Feeder steers $3 to $6 higher. Calves not well tested. Heifers $1 to $3 higher. Mitchell, South Dakota. Great sale in Mitchell, South Dakota. 3,300 head there. Feeder steers $3 to $9 higher. Wow. Feeder heifers $1 to $3 higher. Look at these load lots and biggers out of Mitchell, South Dakota that I pulled out, and I've told you many times they sell those big warmed up near beer feeder cattle that don't require a whole lot of days on them. They've been backgrounded heavily. But the best string I saw right here was on a lighter weight set of feeder steers. 76 head, 744 pound steers bring 151.25. But the best quote that I saw anywhere, and you have to take into consideration where these quotes are coming from, but out of Paris Stockyards in Paris, Kentucky, that load of 895 pound steers bring 125.30, and then 3 loads of all black steers averaged 864 at 130.5 in Paris, Kentucky. And that's your feeder flash for Friday.